Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you saw my previous video, you know that this past summer I had decided to do a surrogacy, and so now I'm documenting it and just sharing my journey and what are some of the things that I have gone through in this process. So I wanted to specifically talk about what the next step was after I decided that I was going to be a surrogate for someone. Normally the process is that you have to find a match, intended parents that are the perfect match for you. And they do a series of psychological exams. Like they have a counselor, a psychologist that kind of just reviews you and reviews the intended parents and just tries to see if it's a perfect fit. Well, our situation was a little bit different. So just to go back a little bit, the reason why I'm able to record now about this is because the process has already finished. So we went through a contract that kind of stipulated we weren't allowed to talk about it until after, and so I'm able to talk about it now freely to you because of that. So again, as I said, I'm not one of the things that the contract stipulated is that I do not disclose who the intended parents are. And so in saying that, because I knew who they were, I was able to kind of not really bypass the whole matching situation. So we did have a counseling session, and let me tell you, it's incredible. So the intended parents get a session where they get interviewed and they get questions asked about, how they feel about this process, how they would tell their kids, how, just different views on how them as the parents receiving the child would take it. And then they ask the surrogate, and they ask not just the surrogate, but they also ask the husband, the spouse. So my husband and I went to a counseling session, and it was awesome. She asked us questions that I kind of had already asked myself, and which helped, honestly. I went through a lot of research and kind of really getting to the nitty-gritty of what surrogacy is and asking myself these questions, like, how would I deal if something went wrong? Not just physically, but if something went wrong with the intended parents. How would I deal with maybe my husband feeling uncomfortable during the process? How would I feel if something went wrong with the pregnancy and the baby? So things like that kind of just make you really get down to the core and are you really able to do this? Obviously, the counselor thought that it was great because we ended up going through the surrogacy process, but she obviously thought that we were a great match and that this would work. So after having a counseling session, the next process was to go through a contract. This one was a little bit difficult, and I will add a little bit of a video that I did do back in the summer when this happened, and here it is. We've finalized our contract, and to be honest, that was a really big emotional pull. I don't want to say that it was an emotional roller coaster. Really, it was kind of like an emotional boat, because it was like wave after wave type of thing. You feel okay and then you don't, and then you feel okay again. And I guess for all of us, the intended parents, and for my husband and I, we just really felt like it was unnecessary to do it. But it's one of those things where it's just just in case something happens, then we're covered with something that is on paper. So we did that, and finally it's done. And once it was done, I just felt like a whole weight was off my shoulders. I can now enjoy this process and this journey. So after that was finalized, our nurse spoke to us on what the next steps were. And the contract is very, very detailed. It goes through things that the intended parents want, and then it goes through what the surrogate wants. And so you have an attorney that kind of takes care of the surrogate and takes care of the intended parents. And sometimes you have two different attorneys that kind of go through the contract. And so this was all covered by the intended parents. The contract doesn't only talk about like little things, or it doesn't talk just about the big things. It also talks about some minuscule things like what you're gonna eat. And maybe you're thinking, well, that's so silly, why would they ask what you would eat during pregnancy? But you gotta think that this pregnancy, again, is not mine. It's their baby, and what I put in my body, the baby will consume also. So it's important to know, what do the parents believe? What if they're like vegan? Then maybe they want me to eat vegan too, right? What if they are just vegetarians? Then maybe they would only want me to eat vegetarian things. It's things like that you never really think about it until you're confronted with that kind of situation. But it's beautiful at the same time because you get to really know the intended parents like to a deeper level. You get to know what it is that they believe in, how it is that they would do this pregnancy themselves. What is it that they're comfortable with, and what do you feel comfortable with? And because I carry my pregnancies pretty well, and the intended parents knew that, they kind of already trusted me to a certain extent that, I would eat properly, I would take rest, I would take care of myself so that the baby would be healthy. And I think that is the most important thing, is that when you're looking at these contracts, not to get offended by what's inside the contract, because really they're just looking out in the best interest of their child. And to some extent, they're also looking out for how you are going to be during your pregnancy, because you never know what could go wrong. You never know what could come up. And so, it's just really taking care of you and the baby, and going by what the parents are hoping for, and how they would do this pregnancy themselves. I think for me, at the very beginning, I was like, wow, this is super detailed, like the littlest things that you never thought that maybe they could have a hand on. But it makes sense. It's all about their baby, not me. So for me, I knew that there was certain things that I was not willing to do. Like, if, I don't know, an example would be if something goes wrong with the pregnancy, then let's say like a stillbirth, would I be okay with having a D&C done? Stuff like that. It goes through everything from abortion to, like, I don't know, if there is what I would eat, down to what I would eat, where I would go, because this pregnancy is not mine. So I'm not just free to go off to Greece if I'm pregnant, so something like that. So I had to go through all those little things on what I was okay with, and of course, hopefully be in agreement with what the intended parents were okay with. So another thing I wanted to address was, I know that some of my friends and family are probably wondering, hey, why didn't I get an announcement? Well, the contract stipulated that I wasn't allowed to tell extended family, core family, and certain specific people, like outside of family, were allowed to know. So, as I said in the previous video, was that I was very careful as to who I was going to tell and how I was going to tell them. Another thing too is that these things are not 100%. Like, just because you do a transfer, like an embryo transfer, doesn't mean that you're going to get it on the shot, like you're going to get pregnant first try. So that's another thing too. I didn't want to get my family curious or my friends curious and then it not work out, or I just didn't want to add drama to the situation. And so, if things went bad, then at least it was just in close quarters. And if things went good, then in the end, there would be a bigger announcement, a different kind of announcement. So, needless to say, I'm here and I'm posting this. In the end, I see that God was behind everything. Like, yes, the intended parents and I really did not want to go through having to do a contract because we felt like we were on the same wavelength. But in hindsight, I'm so glad that I did it, and that we went through the process the way that it should have been done. And that's not to say that anything bad happened, but it's to say that, you don't want to rush into things. So if you're considering doing a surrogacy, don't rush into things. Look at the detailed little things, even in the contract, because you never know of what importance it will be in the long run. And I'm grateful that the intended parents and I, went through the process the correct way and the right way, just because it gives you peace of mind at the end of the day. I mean, whether the process ends up being successful or not, at least you know that you've done it right. So that is what I wanted to talk about today. Hopefully you'll continue seeing my journey. So for the next episode, I'll be talking about what happens after you've completed and signed the contract, what the next steps are going forward. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you soon. Bye.